Hey, welcome back everybody. This is Low Life Plays, coming at you with another deck tech here. This one is for Queen Marchesa. The sleeve I have her in is just this Mewtwo one, but I like the shiny, but it's a little matte, so sorry if you can't see her. But this is my deck that I had together, took apart, had together. It's pretty fun. It's very focused along some lines that you'll see online about Aikido style deck building, where you're just trying to flip stuff on your opponent. And that's kind of what this deck is trying to do, is, establish the Monarch, make the game more interesting with that mechanic, and then use your opponent's stuff against them. Very political. I make tweaks all the time. I actually have some cards coming soon that'll just be some more tweaks, but the deck list on Moxfield, I try and keep that up to date. So, before I get into it, if you like these deck lists and you like what I'm doing here, just remember, comment, subscribe, like the video in the down below. And then we can just keep doing stuff like this, because I love building these decks and seeing what you guys have to say about them. Had some really interesting suggestions on some of the builds and really good insights, so pretty happy about it. Alright, so Marchesa, what does she do? She's a 4-cost. I know she's blinding you with her radiance at the moment, but she's a Death Touch haste. She brings the Monarch when she ETBs, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you make a black assassin token if an opponent is the Monarch. It has Death Touch and haste, can really help you get the Monarch back. Typically you just want to introduce it, let other people fight over it while you just sit back and watch. That's Marchesa. We're running Stoneforge Mystic, and the main reason that we're running Stoneforge is because we are running Sunforger. So Sunforger really helps us with our whole political game plan of equipping and unattaching to be very situational when we need to be. So, Stoneforge gets your Sunforge. Really, pretty easy there. Anything that is a white or red instant card that costs 4 or less, keep in mind throughout this deck tech is something we could fetch at instant speed with our Sunforger. So Vandal Blast. This, we're just going to blow up artifacts. We are controlling, we're Mardu Police is really what we are trying to be here. So being able to get rid of artifacts, problematic ones, is something that's really nice for us. Generous Gift is one of our targeted removal spells. We're also running Guff Rewrites History. I always think of it, it's a huge line of text, but it's a Chaos Warp in it for everybody. Right? For each player you choose a non-enchantment, non-land permanent that they control, and then they shuffle, and then they exile cards until they get a non-land, and then put the rest. So it's a little bit worse than a Chaos Warp, but it can target more for everybody. So for political reasons, that's why I put it in here. Anguished Unmaking, sometimes you just got to get rid of stuff. For our mass clears, we're running Ruinous Ultimatum. We're in Mardu. It's an amazing one. Blasphemous Act. Spiteful Banditry is something I'm trying out here. Just deal X damage, and then it can just produce treasures as one or more creatures your opponents control die. And it's only once each turn, but it can just be some nice passive income. Promise of Loyalty is really, really excellent. You put a Vow counter on Marchesa or on somebody else, one of your other pieces that we'll talk about, and then just, as long as they have a Vow counter on them, they just can't attack you no matter where the game goes. So, pretty cool. Getting into our ramp, we're running Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Chromatic Lantern, and Cursed Mirror as our artifact ramp. Cursed Mirror is the only one that's pretty out of the norm for what we're running normally, but it just has some political nature to it, right? It can ETB, it comes in as a copy of a creature, it has haste, so you can swing with it, do just, situational things. We do have some interesting political ramps, so we have Curse of Opulence. Just get this out early, pick somebody who you think is going to be a problem for you, for the way you want to play. Maybe they don't play a lot of creatures, and then you can just put this on them, start hitting them, getting you some gold. Really good. Generous Plunderer, another one I'm testing out in this rebuild. On your upkeep, you can make a treasure and give a treasure, which is really fun. And then when it attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of artifacts they control. So that's pretty cool. It has Menace, so pretty good. Weathered Wayfarer, this guy, he's great ramp if you're in colors like this. And essentially what Weathered Wayfarer is in here for is there's a specific land that pairs with Sunforger that we'll touch on when we get into our lands. But that's the big reason it's in here, but also just to make sure we can stay consistent with our land drops. Humble Defector. We're getting into our card draw. I love Humble Defector, especially in a political style deck where you can just give it away to people and just try and incentivize some card draw mechanics between you and them. Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Ever since this card came out, I just really like it for card draw. It just, when it ETBs, you discard any number of cards and draw that many +1. I mean, I just like that. It's just really, really super cool. Dire Sight. This is one of the cards that just came out in Bloom Barrow. I really like it. It's very similar to some of these other like Read the Bones style cards where you surveil 2, then draw 2, and lose 2 for 3. Same thing with Read the Bones. You scry 2, draw 2, lose 2. Painful Truths, we're in 3 colors, so we should be able to draw 3, lose 3. And then we're going to get into some control elements. So we're running Blind Obedience to slow people down. We are in Mardu, and we're trying to, like I said, we're Mardu police. So for the royal crown of Queen Marchesa, we are trying to keep things slower. And it gives us some extort, which is nice. Rest in Peace, just shut down some graveyard decks. Just keep them, you know, where they should be, just off this table. I love graveyard. Shay Cormac, you know, a newer one from Assassin's Creed. You pay 1 and you can take away permanents your opponents control. They lose hexproof, indestructible protection, shroud, and ward, which is just awesome. And then when you target things, they get bounty counters, then you can put counters on Shay. But really what it's in here for is some political things where you just get people. There's a lot of gotcha spells and a lot of gotcha mechanics in this style of a deck. So, you know, someone swings in, plays a protection card, or it prevents them from playing that heroic intervention because, you know, if you have 1 mana up, you could just take it away. Drawn on Linvala, she comes down for 4. She's a 3/4 flying, which is nice for us to be on the defensive because we don't really attack a lot unless we're closing the game. So she takes away the activated abilities of creatures your opponents control and gives them to Drawn on Linvala, which is super nice. Kazul, this is starting into our protection era of cards here. So whenever an opponent attacks you, you make a 3/3 unless they pay 3. And that is just for every creature. So he costs 5, he's a 5/4, but he can really make it so people do not want to attack you or give you 3/3s to just block all the creatures attacking. Ghostly Prison is a classic. Windborn Muse is just person, Ghostly Prison. Solemnity is in here as a stacks piece against, you know, anything that gets counters. But it's also really good because it combos with these other 2 cards. So we can use this Solemnity in combination with Phyrexian Unlife or in combination with Delaying Shield. So Solemnity is counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. So when you have Phyrexian Unlife out, you have 0 or less life. All damage is dealt as it had Infect. You can't get poison counters as long as you have Solemnity. So this can keep you alive, and this can keep you alive. Because Delaying Shield, if I'd be dealt damage, put that many delay counters on Delaying Shield instead, and at the beginning of your upkeep, remove all delay counters or take 1 damage for each one you can't. Unless you can pay, but if you can't put counters on Delaying Shield, then it's just I don't take damage until you remove one of these pieces. So they are all really excellent, super fun to just get into play, buys you a lot of time. Getting back into things, we run Kumbal. You know, he's amazing at slowing things down, and he's incremental life drain and gain whenever an opponent casts another creature. Brina is some card draw, and just, you know, it really wants your opponents to keep hitting the people who have the most life, because oftentimes, once you put the Monarch in, people are pretty incentivized. They really crave and thirst for that card draw. So you just play Brina, and then they'll start hitting people. Oh, the foil on Brina is hard to read. But whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than any of your other opponents, the attacking player draws a card, and then I put counters on it. So it really incentivizes people to attack my opponents and the ones with the most life. So we're just bringing everybody down to the same level. Ophiomancer is just a value creature where, you know, you're just making Death Touch snakes. So, you know, if you have Marchesa out and Ophiomancer, you're making 2 1/1 Death Touchers on a pretty regular basis, so you constantly are pretty protected. Some more value creatures are going to be Nighthawk Scavenger and Varrock. I have them in here for the same reason. Varrock's pretty replaceable for any other value or stacks piece. I'm not sure what I want to do with him yet, but I like the idea of just having some more flying Death Touch lifelink blockers. And Nighthawk Scavenger gets huge, so just this is a big one, gains you some life, keeps people away from you. Same thing here, where it's just a 2/2, but it does have Death Touch. So Death Touch can also incentivize people to kind of swing elsewhere. And then rounding out that big value creature package is going to be Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. You know, this is also a replaceable gotcha effect, but I like it just because when I do in the late game, you know, you're trying to play everybody against each other until it's against you and one other person. And then this is when you're dropping these big bombs where like, okay, well now I'm going to double all my damage against you and hit you, swing for big, and then you're not going to be able to hit me. So really good. And then Insurrection is another along those lines, where you want everyone to be building up. You want everybody to be doing whatever they can do, just not to you. And then when it's time to just shut it down and end the event, Insurrection comes out and you just take everybody's big things and you hit them with them, and it's really, really good. Getting into some of our protection, we have Boros Charm. You know, this is just very flexible. It can be removal. Most times it's just going to give our stuff indestructible, or it can give a creature double strike. So, you know, like I said, if we're ending the game, we have Gisela. Just give Gisela double strike. Boom. That's 5, 10, 20 damage because she's got double strike and doubles the damage dealt. Crazy stuff. Angel's Grace, if we're going to die, no, we're not. You can't lose the game, and your life can't go to less than 1. It would go to 1 instead. Has split second, so no matter what happens, that's what happens. I've used this to just secure second place sometimes, just for fun, but that's what this deck is about. It's just, I mean, gotcha spells are really about just having stories about decks, and that's what makes me build this deck and take it apart and build it again, because it just has so many fun, unique scenarios that come up. Where you get to play stuff like Rakdos Charm, where, you know, someone goes crazy with Scoot Swarms, they die. So, you know, they're a graveyard deck, you have that, you have artifact removal, really good stuff. And you get to play Mana Tithe, man. Mana Tithe is just one of the most fun cards ever. No one ever expects it. It's just a counter spell unless they pay 1. Someone goes really hard into it and you're in Mardu and you just go Mana Tithe. Oh, people's faces is worth every penny. Same thing with Tybalt's Trickery. You're in red. No one's expecting you to counter spells, so you are going to do that. Delirium. You can only play it on opponent's turns, and you tap a creature they control and it hits them. So it deals damage equal to the controller, equal to its power, which is really fun. Super good. Deflecting Palm. One of the most classic cards for this style of thing, but nothing feels better than when someone's going to Etherflux you and you Deflecting Palm it back. Oh! Next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, hit that person with that damage. It's so good. Mandate of Peace. Someone's going too hard. You cast it during. You can cast it only during combat, and then your opponents can't cast any more spells, and you end the combat phase. So I like this more than a fog. It's just a pretty much, oh, you're getting scary and you're kind of getting towards, I think you're going to hit me. You just Mandate of Peace and you stop the turn. You're like, all right, this is over. We're done. Carter Doomscourge. This is great. Just being able to come in, goad everything, and then drain people as other creatures die. A card I need to kind of fit in here. There's a huge, I mean, my list of cards I want to have in this deck is so big. So after rebuilding this deck, I'm trying to find more spots and what I can cut, what needs to be swapped. Because I'd really like to put like a Sword of Hearth and Home or some other like repeatable flicker effect for some of these ETB effects, mainly Carter, just to continually flicker and goad. Be really good. Duelist's Heritage. Nothing is better than when you have a Duelist's Heritage out and then people are just being like, I'll swing at player B instead of you if you give it double strike. And then you're like, yeah, sure. And you can also not make any deals. And just out of nowhere, it's just whenever one or more creatures attack. You don't have to say it. Like, oh, that's attacking? There you go. That has double strike. This is just protection for ourselves, right? Dawn Charm. We're going to prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. You can regenerate a creature or counter target spell that targets you. Really flexible. It's fetchable with Sunforger. Really good stuff. Comeuppance. Also fetchable. This is just another sort of Deflecting Palm with a little bit of extra steps. You can prevent all damage that will be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn by sources you don't control. If damage from a creature source is prevented this way, it smacks the creature. If damage from a non-creature source is prevented this way, it smacks the controller. So this can also really stop an Etherflux situation or any other mass damage spell and just kill the player who cast it. Or it's a board wipe against someone who has a very large board. Brash Taunter, excellent. You know, no one wants to hit Brash Taunter because he's indestructible, and then I'm just going to hit you with whatever you hit me with. Ink Shield, so good. This card, I know it's creeping up in price. It's probably, I think it's like 15 or 20 now, but it is just, I mean, it's a game-winning card, right? It costs 5, and it fits so good into a deck that is so reactive like we are. You know, a lot of decks have trouble keeping up 5 mana to react this way, but that's really all we're trying to do is just be reactive. So it fits so good into our strategy, and we get to play it without feeling any sort of way. We just get to prevent all combat damage and then crack back with Ink Shield. And it doesn't even have to be, it's excellent. It's just so good. Selfless Squire, along the same lines of that, where you can just really just buff up a Selfless Squire and just take somebody out. You know, someone tries to KO you, swing all out, you flash out a Selfless Squire. It doesn't even have to be anything crazy. You know, just getting a big blocker on board with flash is nice, but just preventing all damage is really good. These are some more gotcha spells that I really just love, like Fork and Reverberate. I love these style of cards. Just being able to copy an instant or sorcery spell, so good. You know, players in green, they're ramping. You want to ramp, just blow this card on whatever you want. It feels great. Whatever they are doing, you're doing it too. It can also be a counter spell to protect some of your big spells, like an Insurrection. Super good. Wild Ricochet. I mean, it's a Wild Ricochet, man. It's you can change the target of an instant or sorcery, and then you copy it. So someone tries to remove your thing, remove 2 of their things instead. That sounds like a fair deal. Deflecting Swat, same thing. You know, someone's trying to blow your thing up or blow maybe your friend's thing up if you're playing like a 2-headed giant or a Kingdoms scenario. Really good. And then these are some more really fun cards that kind of get the table hitting each other, which we want to incentivize that, right? So we're running Slicer, classic kind of card for this. You just keep giving him away, and your opponents also can choose how they're giving it away, which is really good, right? At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of Slicer, and then if you do, untap Slicer, go to... It's just so good, so good. Just give that away. Just keep giving Slicer to whoever you want. Zancha, same kind of stuff. You give it to someone initially, and then you can pay to draw cards. Other people can pay. And then it starts incentivizing that violence towards that player because it's like, oh, well, you didn't have to pay to draw the card, but, you know, it's fun. And then Alexios, a newer one, pretty much another slicer. The foiling on this one's a little, makes the camera weird, but essentially it attacks each combat if able, can't be sacked, can't attack its owner. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player gains control of Alexios, untaps it, and puts a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gains haste. So you're just making it stronger, it goes around, it can't hit you, really good. So it's even better than Goated, because it can't hit me. Even when it's just between me and another player, it can't hit me. Super good. But either way, Ministerith, this is getting into our lands, so we're going to run a Ministerith, a Razorgrass Ambush, a Fell the Profane as some of our just one-of kind of lands here. And then, oh, and we're also running a Mines of Moria, just because, you know, Queen Marchesa, a lot of our stuff is legendary, so just having these lands that can do extra things is good. And then just having these two that are deal 3 damage and just destroy are just really nice on some just bolt lands there. We are running some fetches. We're running Bloodstained Mire, Marsh Flats, and Fabled Passage. So that's going to be what we're going to be running in terms of like those. We are also running a Shattered Landscape to just get whatever kind of colors we need, make sure we're on top of that. We are running Mistveil Plains. This is the land that we were talking about, where you pay a white and you can put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. You can only do this if you have 2 or more white permanents, but this is what we're using with Sunforger. So if we go use like our Deflecting Palm, we go put it on the bottom, and then we can go fetch up Deflecting Palm again. It's really, really strong. Labyrinth of Scophos. This is, I mean, I really want a Maze of Ith effect, but I want this one just because I want to be able to pay mana for it. And my Maze of Ith is in another deck at the moment, and I just don't want to get another one. Land Hate. Got to be able to destroy a land. We do have, you know, cards that can destroy lands, but having another one is just always good. We have running a Nomad Outpost, a Command Tower, and a Exotic Orchard for our multicolor lands for everything. Running a Godless Shrine, Concealed Courtyard, Tainted Field as our white-black lands. Running Inspired Vantage, Furycom Snarl, Battlefield Forge, Clifftop Retreat, and Sacred Foundry as our white-red lands. And then we're going to run Sulphurous Springs, Blackcleave Cliffs, a Smoldering Marsh, Foreboding Ruins, and a Dragon Skull Summit as our black-red lands. And then for our basics, we're just going to be running 4 plains, 4 swamps, and 3 mountains. So that is the gist of our Marchesa build and what we're going to be doing and kind of the goals of what we try to do with her in the game. I think she's super fun. I mean, she's fun enough to the point where I keep taking her apart, building her again. The only reason I will be skeptical, and the only reason that she sometimes doesn't feel as fun is because this deck is very reliant on what your opponents are doing. So that's kind of what some of the tweaks I've made on this rebuild are, is I've thrown in some more creatures, some more ways for me to just deal the damage. The previous builds I had were very focused on what the opponents were doing and how to flip it back on them. But sometimes I found myself, like, if they're struggling, I'm struggling. So I cut that back a little bit and put myself a little bit more in the advantage. And I'm interested to try it out and see how it goes. I've been tweaking it all this week and last week, and I'm going to test it out on Friday and see how that goes. But if anyone else has a similar deck or similar stories about Marchesa or some other gotcha mechanics, I do have a Fury's Toll. It's the red bird one. I have that one coming, and I have the other black-red card, Backlash, coming, just because I think they would be really good. I didn't buy them on my first run. But if this is something you enjoyed and you had a good time listening to me ramble about the Queen, then, you know, leave a like, comment down below any other cool gotcha cards that I should include or try out at least. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!